With the rise of the internet, marketers are looking at their agencies to facilitate their move into the digital world. To deliver real value, agencies have to become experts on digital channels and the technology used to support marketing in these channels. Richard Mullins told me more. Richard Mullins, welcome to Tech at Work. Thanks for joining me. We're looking at how technology has shaped marketing and how marketers actually need to catch a game and get involved in technology. If we look at technology, it's really changed the consumer's world, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think it's allowed them access to information and to products that are not related to their traditional confined boundaries. So you're finding people are looking at products in other countries, in other kind of geographies, and they're looking at different pricing structures and different mechanisms. So marketers have to really be on top of their game now in terms of what they promise customers and understanding what customers are looking at and how they're accessing information.
Well, how important is it at the moment for marketers to understand the technology that's being used by consumers?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for everybody at the moment. I think the technology is an enabler. I think it's more around the information that's actually being delivered and where people are finding information. If you look at somebody that's buying a car these days, they'll go to a company's website to find out more about the kind of price ranges, where the cars are. But then they're going to get involved in social media. They're going to look at blogs on people that have rated cars. They're going to go to websites that have had test drives of the cars and looked at fuel efficiencies and processes and all those kind of things. They're going to go to industry bodies and see what the basket of parts and the spares cost and all those kind of things. So I think that's changed the world, and it's put marketing companies under a lot more pressure, because what it means is that the consumers are becoming more and more informed about what is out there, what are their options, and it means that the marketers have to keep up to date with that. And I think that's where the pressure is starting to tell. And also making sure that they're up to date in terms of the information that's available, which marketing people now are having to kind of step back and go, okay, well, how do I keep relevant? How do I make sure that I'm speaking to people when they need to be spoken to? And the technology enables that. I think the question around it is, how do you manage the information and where do you put it? I think that's kind of the big question being faced.
Richard, if we look at South Africa and the marketing sector within South Africa, how do we compare to the rest of the world in terms of online and digital marketing?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think from our experience, I mean, we're a global company, and we see that marketing in South Africa is really split from an online perspective. We have probably some of the most cutting-edge marketers in South Africa in terms of online marketing. And we're seeing people using the technology, the information that they have, in ways that some of the companies overseas haven't even started to investigate. At the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, we have, I think, a lot of marketers that haven't really embraced technology or the internet. They don't understand how to use it to enable themselves, let alone their consumers. And I think we sit with this dichotomy. And when we go and present at conferences and those things, we often find that there's some guys that walk back and say, we didn't really learn anything, and other people are sitting there going, wow, that was amazing, I've never looked at it like that. And I think that's kind of one of the challenges that we face, is to bring everybody up to speed and enable people from a broader perspective. So yeah, I think we kind of stuck between the two.
You mentioned social media a little while ago. If we look at social networking, is it enough for a marketer to say, look, you know what, I've gone into Facebook, I've sort of done something on there. It's a big crowd that gets involved in Facebook and reads their updates and stuff, and they tick it off in the box. What are your thoughts on social networking as a way of marketing? Yeah,
social networking is quite interesting, because eMarketer recently actually, and Jupiter Networking, which are two of the biggest online research companies in the world, they've actually just downgraded the growth of social networks as a marketing practice worldwide. They expected the growth originally last year to be at around 34% for 2009. They've halved that prediction about 2 months ago to 17%. So that's a huge drop. I mean, it's a 50% reduction in terms of their original predictions. And the reality of it is that we don't truly understand how to interact with people on social networks and how to maximize the value out of it. We know that it's a massive opportunity. I just don't think that we've as a marketing online fraternity, have really grasped the true kind of capabilities of engaging with audiences at that level. I also think it's important to understand that social kind of networks are just a small part of a much bigger kind of online play. There's things like, what are you going to do around mobile? Are you in search? Are you in search optimization? Are you going to have banner display advertising? Online streaming is going to be coming down the track in a big way. So it's all part of a bigger model, and I think really where marketers should be looking at is how do they build those models and understand what that model drives for their business. And part of that process is to understand and use the data that they have available to create the model that works for them. And what works for you as one marketer doesn't necessarily work for another brand or for another company. And that's where online is quite different.
If we look at some of the obstacles that South Africa faces in terms of online, broadband has to be number one. With the advent of better broadband, faster broadband coming to South Africa, how does that affect online marketing, and does it at all?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I mean, at the moment, a lot of people are sitting going, it's all about broadband. But if you look at it, mobile is actually bigger. If you take things like Mixit, Mixit have double the number of users using IP technology to access web and content through their phones. If you look at WAP-enabled phones in South Africa, we have 9 million people that have WAP-enabled phones. We only have 6 million people online. So now the question is that person that has a phone, are they online or are they not? Yeah. And that's a debate. I think broadband is an issue. There's a lot of debate about the CCOM cable that's landing and the effect that that is going to have on process. The reality is, from my perspective, I look at it and I go, well, that's great, but what about the devices? And there's a lot of writing starting to happen now about what they call, everyone's talked about Web 2.0. Yeah. The next step is Web 3.0. And 3.0 is really about the device. It's about being permanently connected, the third screen, for lack of a better term. And I think that's really where we're going to start seeing a much bigger drive. And from an Africa perspective and a South Africa perspective, I think that broadband will diminish in terms of longer term, and I think mobile will become the key player. I also think that the cost of interaction is going to change. I don't know if you've heard about the $100 computer kind of project that was launched.
Yes, yeah.
That's starting to take shape, and they're now looking at saying, okay, they've got a computer that costs 1,000 Rand. Now, what does that do to the man on the street in terms of his availability to access, one, a device to be able to access the web, and two, then accessing the web itself? So I think there's a lot of theory. I don't think we really understand where it's going to end up.
Richard, just briefly before we leave it at that, your thoughts as to what's going to happen next in terms of online marketing, just briefly for us.
Sure. I think online marketing, I think marketers are going to need to kind of step back and look at what are they actually doing and what is their return on investment. I think the current economic crisis has put a bit more pressure on people to make sense of where they're spending, what is their return on investment, and to understand the data and the technologies that are available to them. Based on that, I think what's going to come next is it's not so much about what's the next big thing, is it social media or mobile? I think it's understanding what does that do for my brand and how do I use that to interact with my consumer. Be it through email, be it through advertising, be it through blogs. And I think marketers are going to have to kind of step back and say, okay, I need to now work at this and build programs that allow them to start engaging with those things on a more meaningful level.
Well, Richard Mullins, thank you for joining me on Tech at Work.
Thanks, Darren, very much.